Hello and welcome to another week of Game Wisdom Live. This is going to be for the week of August 24th, 2017. Hope everyone is doing well. I see Elgoto, you are in chat already. Thanks for stopping by. Well, and please welcome again my co-host while he's still in mid-move, Robert Leach.
Hello. Yeah, move's going slow, but we're on the way.
And hopefully any day now you will get your webcam set up and then everyone can see both of us talking here.
Yeah, that's the plan.
So it has been another one of those very interesting weeks. For those of you who missed the announcements or some of the trouble, YouTube's demonetization practice has certainly been causing headaches all around. A lot of my videos seem to have been demonetized on and off without any real explanation. And then today, like, the reverse happened. A Dark Souls stream got demonetized, while the chat about Crunch remained monetized. So, I don't know, maybe the thing is learning, or maybe I pissed someone off when I email them. So, that should be a lot of fun. Now, also this week, I'm going to pull this up here. It seems that quite a lot of you have submitted to the Saturday Night Grab Bag in terms of voting. So I put that over on Patreon, and I don't think I heard anything back about it. So I may just have to go with my sort of go down the votes and then pick the games myself. Because I made it so that anyone who donates $5 or more basically gets to have final voting on what games to see. So I'm trying to think if there's any other way to spice things up at the $5 category. If you guys have any suggestions, please let me know, because the more people who donate to that level, not only does it help things out here, but it means we can actually get people interested in seeing what games they like for the Saturday Night Grab Bag. Let's see. I'm trying to think if there's anything else off the top of my head. So, one thing about this, how are things going with you, Rob, with the whole moving going on?
It's going good. I mean, we've still got way too many boxes, given the time we've been here, which is just about to hit 3 weeks. So it's not been too long, but long enough.
So, I guess for you, like, I know we were talking about this in Discord. So, everything is good, I guess, with you having a job at your new home.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same job I had up in Oregon, but the home office, so things are a little busier.
Awesome. And yeah, like we said earlier, hopefully in like a week or so we'll be able to have you back on, I guess, camera and everything for the stream. Have you been doing Twitch streaming since we last spoke?
Yeah, I Twitch streamed last weekend. I've moved from Titan Quest, which was before my move, and now I'm in Torchlight 2. So same genre, but just a more updated game. Nice. Even though that one's old too now.
And for those of you watching this live right now, let me know if you're able to view the text in the screen down there. If it's too small, I can, of course, zoom in. But, yeah, it's definitely been a crazy week. As I was saying just before we got on here, I just finished the 2 of the presentations I have planned for next month. So, at this point, the presentations are done unless anyone wants to have another one they'd like me to develop. So now I just have to run through the practice speech and hopefully not flub the lines too much there. Let's see, anything else in terms of general news? Looks like we did hit about 2,223 subscribers on the YouTube channel as of this week. So once again, thank you to everyone who is subscribing and enjoying the content here. Ooh, excuse me. And also, for those of you who missed it, I did start a play of Dark Souls this week. I finally able to get it to work in OBS, so I've been going through it and got a lot of people watching as I died continuously over and over again on the stream. Have you played Dark Souls, Rob?
No, not actually myself. I've watched people play Dark Souls. It's intimidating enough that way.
And the best part is I've been cutting out some of the grinding elements of it. So the people who see it recorded, they think I'm all great, like I beat the boss in like 2 tries, when it really took like 4 or 5 tries and an hour of grinding to get to that point. But now I just broke the illusion for anyone watching it too. So there we go.
Yeah. You've told your secrets.
And let's see, as I was just telling Rob before we got on, I've been working on the ebook. I'm almost at the halfway point, and I did submit my pitch to GDC. I think it was just about 6 or 7 days ago. So at this point, all that's left is to wait until September and hearing the yay or nay as to whether or not I'll be able to keep going.
Yeah, good luck there.
Thank you. But we certainly got some very interesting topics to talk about today. Last week we couldn't find anything interesting to bring up, and this week we got several big things that kind of fell into our lap. So, I guess the first thing, I'm trying to think which one should we talk about first. There's the more announcements regarding the We Happy Few, there's the crunch debate, and then there's this article about indie publishing. So, I guess for you, Rob, what do you feel like chatting about first?
Oh my gosh, it is a plethora of things. I know We Happy Few is not one of those things I am great at, but I am looking forward to learning more about that. I know you've brought it up many times. The either one of those other ones I have many opinions about. So I don't know. Let's go ahead and do, I guess, crunch. Let's do crunch.
Okay. So for those of you who missed the Industry Insight earlier today, if you're watching this live, or or actually that I think it's about it. There was a big article or a post on Polygon this week from an author of a book regarding his experience with crunch when it came to the game industry. And it certainly left a lot of people heated about the argument. Like, from the article, it sounded like he was either in support of crunch or he favored it. But then when he was asked about it on Twitter, he was saying, no, I don't support it at all. And it's kind of being thrown back and forth as to crunch good, crunch bad. And it's definitely a tricky situation all around. And again, if you missed the Industry Insight, crunch is the act of basically working way beyond the normal hours on a project. Whether you're at a AAA studio and they ask you to stay another 10 to 15 hours to work on it, or if you're working on your own and you decide to push yourself a few more hours every night and you're just basically grinding on the game to try and get it accomplished. And the downside of crunch, of course, is that when it pays off or when it happens, it can leave someone feeling burnt out at its worst or at its best, and at its worst could cause severe health issues. And we've probably have seen many stories about it, and I know there's more that's probably been swept under the rug. So, I already gave my little talk in the Industry Insight about it, but what do you think about it, Rob?
Yeah, first of all, I just saw that you had that post earlier, and I'm definitely going to have to listen to it. It's like 15, 16 minutes, so that's perfect. But when I first started, this was 2002 or 2003, I was in QA, just like a lot of us were. But yeah, it was one of those things where it was kind of assumed that you would just do whatever was asked. And because most of the people there, like by far, were mid-20s or younger, even teens at that point, we didn't have any problem. Like, we didn't have all that like deep of lives outside. Most of our social stuff, we were gamers for the most part. That was our interest. And so when we came to work, we got to play games. We hang out with people who also liked games, and so it was actually kind of the social interaction we wanted just at work. So there, I feel like that was what the article was talking about. He, in the heyday, what he was doing there, he just really liked to work, and so that fit him. Now, there were separate instances. I had to work 40 consecutive days of 10 plus hours a day. And the thing that I remember most is that you have no idea what day it is. You lose track of Monday through Friday, and you can't, of course, do anything outside of that. But at the same time, like, I did not mind it. It was, I didn't mind doing. And when I was hourly, I got overtime, and then I was salary, and suddenly I didn't get overtime. So that is certainly a big complaint. I feel like the biggest problem is less from the individual working the overtime, especially if they like it, and more about the company. If the company just does it, they don't necessarily even ask, they just do it, then that's kind of on them. Certainly when the EA had their huge like fallout with that years ago, where spouses and everybody just got in on it. When you have a family, that is the time where crunch just doesn't work out for you.
Yeah.
And even if there's personal problems going on, suddenly crunch is not something you can do, and like you say, burnout and all that stuff. But it is very age specific and personality specific, and those people don't mind being taken advantage of. It's the company that's doing the taking advantage of. So they are almost entirely in the wrong. And like he says in the article, like is pretty much accepted around, is that you can avoid a lot of the crunch time driving forces, which is to say being late with a game or just trying to hit a deadline. Like all these things, all these, oh boy, my wife's having a lot of trouble outside apparently. All these things kind of going towards all that stuff. But yeah, when the company forces that on them, even though it's their own fault for getting there, it affects a lot of people in a lot of different ways, and it is unfair. The people who like to do it have leverage all of a sudden for the people who can't, and they wind up getting ahead and getting promotions and bonuses and that kind of thing, whereas the other people, they feel like they have to do it to keep up. Certainly you can't be fired legally for not wanting to work ridiculous overtime hours, but there certainly is that bias all of a sudden, which just just one of many reasons why it is a very difficult thing to pull off and have people like you for it.
Yeah, and as Algordo was saying in chat, the other side is when we see this from the independent point of view, when you only have like 4 or 5 people working on a project, and you run to that situation where we said we were only going to work like 6-7 hours today, but we're really jamming. Why don't we spend another 3 or 4? And as he's saying, like when your work and life are more intertwined like that, it becomes a lot more complicated. And good example of that, of course, would be like Stardew Valley's developer who spent 4 years working on the game by himself, and I forget like how many untold hours of crunch doing it.
Yeah, India is certainly very different in that regard. A lot of projects. So you get people who just love doing it, and it's themselves, so they can treat themselves however they want. When you get a small team, it becomes a little more complicated when you probably have at least 1 or 2 needing to work a full or part-time job, and thus the strain goes on them or the other people, and that is its own little dynamic. But I'm assuming those people all know each other, so it is a very different beast, as you say, Gordo.
Now, I guess, what do you think, Rob, about when people say, again, like about avoiding crunch? There's the most popular argument is that if you knew what you were doing, or if you had management skills or stuff like that, that you can't avoid crunch. That for a lot of people, crunch is like is kind of like a failure state, that something went wrong. So yeah.
Oh, sorry. I agree with that sentiment. However, the larger a game gets, the less control even managers have over what's going on. When you have like a big AAA title, there are specifically back then I was working on sports titles, and sports titles have very, very particular launch dates assigned to them. Like you can't miss you can't miss the opening, like the preseason of football. If you miss that, like your competition has won. And these days EA doesn't have any competition there, but like any other sport in particular, you've lost if you don't launch by that day. And then the problem comes in terms of the management. I find a lot of places put a lot of the marketing people or even developers, have their eyes wide and get ideas about features, and that's where I think the primary problem is feature creep. I don't think that there are so many people who don't know how to run a project or a budget. I just think that feature creep and certainly massive unseen issues, but adding new features to a game that's in mid progress with, especially in those days, consoles, or even just consoles now, whose technology is often very new when you're making a game. or very different. So these developers are learning new things as they go, and maybe adding new things as they become available, and that is a killer for any.
Mm-hmm. Oop.
Yeah, I like that comment. Is yeah.
You kind of cut out like right at the last second there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Basically, what I was saying is when you get the feature creep, that is the biggest stab in the heart of a project timeline. Just because it's unforeseen, you don't know, you can't scope it out super quick. I mean, there's just a lot of. I believe that is the main driving component of overtime hours.
Yeah. And as you said, when it comes to that kind of feature creep, or when it comes to crunch in general, as I was saying in the video, it becomes kind of like a snowball picking up speed downhill. The second you start to fall behind, everything falls behind around it, and it's very easy to enter that state where it always feels like you're 2 weeks behind schedule, no matter what you're doing, and it's just. And then, as we were saying, it becomes like almost. I'm not sure if institutionalized would be the right word here, but for a lot of people, it almost becomes like you should be crunching all the time. Like it's just a part of working on a game.
Yeah, and that is a huge problem. Is just that mentality of that's just how it is. I understand that mentality. Whenever people get into the industry and they see it over and over and over again, they assume that's the norm. I won't say fortunate enough. It's a hard thing to say. I got into fringe, which is to say games that aren't necessarily for gamers. And they're run like normal businesses. So I started working just 40-hour weeks, and that became my norm. And I would look in on the games industry and be like, what is wrong with them? They know that this is how you do business, and this is how you treat your employees and all this kind of stuff. I mean, it was eye-opening unto itself, and ever since then I've just been doing that over and over again, and it's much more stable, much less harrowing.
And getting back to the idea of feature creep, again, especially when it comes to any developers, when it's like your first or second game where you're trying to do something brand new, it's very easy to throw more than you can handle into a single project. I talked about what I saw with Clockwork Empires and Gaslamp Games, and how they just kind of overwhelmed themselves with the whole concept, and that nothing ever really seemed to come of it. And it's very hard, like as we were saying earlier, that trying to balance work and life, especially when you are like the entire company, or it's like you and three friends, it's a different experience compared to you're working at a major studio and you have a boss telling you have to stay late.
Yeah, and certainly you could say no, but when other people are saying yes, it looks terrible. Yeah.
Now, I guess this answer is probably going to be really apparent after our talk, but I'm assuming at this point, do you feel that crunch has a place in the industry or no?
I feel like in general, no. But I can see that it's going to happen. It has to happen sometimes. Even if you're super, on track, you don't have feature creep, there's always that off chance that a bug's going to happen, or a hiccup somewhere in hardware development. So that could just extend your schedule, without even knowing. I always look at the projects that I always look towards as an example are buildings and structures, because you cannot add new features. Once you're starting to build, you can't add new features. That's just not going to happen. But things can delay you, like weather and that kind of thing. So it's the same if you can just remove feature creep, which is so tempting, especially for younger people. It is so tempting. And that multiple roles comment as well, I feel like that is very, that really does add to it too.
And I was just talking to my friend Z from Serenity Forge, and we talked again about, for a lot of independent developers, it's very hard for them to wear those multiple hats. It feels like a lot of people get into the game design, they get into it from the art point of view. And as we said, there's a huge amount of passion when it comes to making video games. And it's hard to kind of separate that from the actual business work that has to get done when you're trying to make something profitable.
Yeah, I got into it too, especially out there in indie games. It's really hard. Like you see someone else do something and you want to put it in, or you hear that people are doing like this kind of thing, and you feel like you need that as well. Whether it be like you controller support or basically anything of that nature that can come in. Like, oh, I need more roguelike elements, or I need more special
Multiplayer.
effects. Yeah, multiplayer,
Yeah.
online multiplayer. Like you get I can totally integrate that in my game, but yeah, it's just you just shoot yourself in the foot.
Yeah. And then, of course, as I think I said this a while ago about knowing when your game is done. Because when you're working by yourself, you don't have someone saying you must ship your game next week. So you can always just keep adding and adding and adding and thinking, oh, I'm just making my game better, and it's going to give it a better chance of thriving in the market. But there's always the classic Duke Nukem Forever as I think a really good example of this. Like I remember reading stories about how the lead designer just basically just said what you did, Rob, that or what you said, Rob, that whenever he saw something new or exciting, he was like, let's put that into the game. Oh, there's a new game engine? Let's completely rebuild the game for that. Someone's done a new kind of level design? Let's do that as well. And turn an idea into like what was it, like 10, 11 year design window.
Yeah, it really opens up. Now, I do agree with a lot of people who say that you should release the game when it's ready. Now, like I said, a lot of games don't have that privilege, but there's something to be said for iterating on polish, and I feel like polish is the thing you need to go after, whether it be improving UI or improving graphics, not adding more. I feel like that's the kind of thing that people mistake when they hear polish.
Mm-hmm. Now, speaking about polish and again that issue of feature creep, I think that segues really nice into some of the things that have been going on with We Happy Few. So I think we'll move to that, and then we'll jump back into indie publishing. So I'm sure there's a big discussion for that one as well. So the news regarding We Happy Few has certainly taken an interesting turn this week. I think we talked about this one last week regarding
We did, yeah.
regarding the price update, and since then they've been trying to play damage control with We Happy Few, and it doesn't seem to be working. So there was a post, or there was a blog update that was then posted to GameIndustry.biz, wherein they were talking about basically trying to turn this game and make it into, as they say, a full retail experience. And again, it started out as a Kickstarter game that became a $30 early access, and that's now going to become a $60 retail game. And the designer was saying that they've gone from a team of 8 to 40. And I guess one thing that I don't know if this sounds, I think this sounded better in his head when he said it, but he said that they're now spending as much money per month than what they made on the Kickstarter originally. And I think he tried to make that sound like they've really grown and improved, but I don't know, that sounds very sketchy to me, that he's saying that, like saying that, oh, well, now we don't really need the Kickstarter money anymore. And today I decided to record some more footage of me playing We Happy Few now that, oh my goodness, I don't even remember when it first came out, and I'm not really seeing all that much of an improvement from back then to where it is now. And they're saying that basically, again, with that full retail experience, they're not really enlightening us on what that actually means. Like, how is this going to be different than what was originally promised? And as Alberto was saying in chat, yeah, the full retail sounds like feature creep, and the only things they've announced so far is there's going to be a season pass, DLC, and pre-order bonuses. And of course, as we know, all gamers love all three of those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I mean, I was just going to say one of the things that strikes me about that whole where we're increasing and spending more money is that there is a huge difference between managing a 7-person team and a 40-person team.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have that knowledge or that skill set, all that money is going to be spent spinning your wheels and trying to figure out how that system works and building the system as opposed to improving the game. So you're going to have one artist, for example, who did the original vision and suddenly having to train all these other artists in that particular style. And same with and you're going to have to deal with the personalities that come with it all of a sudden. And that artist has to step away from the actual art role. And the same with the developers. They have to bring everyone up to date on the code. Designers, they have to bring them all the way all up to date on the mechanics and the engines and all that kind of stuff. It's a huge mess. And yeah, you're going to spend an awful lot more money, but no one's going to see it the gamers aren't going to see that for a long time.
Mm-hmm. And again, I think what also hurts We Happy Few is the fact that we've seen this game. Everyone's been playing this game since it got into early access. So again, I'm not sure like where's that additional $30 is going to come from. And as Olgar said in chat, they're saying it's only going to take them 8 months to basically do this transition into a AAA experience. And even if they have 40 people, now they're spending, I think, like $350,000 a month on the game. I don't know. Like, and as you said, Rob, like, especially when it comes to the video game industry, it's very hard sometimes to see where the money goes. Like, for instance, we talked about Owlboy and the game taking about 10 years of on and off development to be released. When I played that game, it didn't feel like a 10-year project. And like, there's just a lot of factors that go into it, from the aesthetics to the design. Another really good example, of course, would be Cuphead. And again, Cuphead has definitely been a really big example of that kind of feature creep mentality. Like, now, of course, the developer said that the original vision was to be this full, big adventure that they decided to shrink down to just boss battles. And then after getting the backing from Microsoft, they decided to add that back in. But again, when you say, oh, we're going to release the game next year, it's almost done, to then say, you know what, we're going to spend the next 2 to 3 years working on it, it just sounds very weird.
It does. It really does. And I think people, I was talking to a guy who was approaching me with a game. I don't remember the game or the person's name, which is probably beneficial in this point. But he gave me this game he wanted to make. It was like, the game looked amazing. Like, it really did. And he said he was a part of some bigger AAA game originally, and so he's got that experience behind him. And then he showed me his schedule, and the schedule was like every week had something new. And I looked at it and I'm like, well, this is the most compact, shrunk down, perfect looking schedule that doesn't allow for any mistakes whatsoever. And I feel like that's that 8-month thing. They forgot to bring up, well, what about hiring, and what about training, and what about expenses and HR and all that crap that goes with a suddenly growing business. You don't take that into account, and you have this schedule that sounds perfect in your head. Well, I did all this in X months, so if we want to do this, it's going to take us even less with more people. And, it never works out that way.
It's the age-old adage, just throwing money at the problem is not going to solve it any faster.
Right.
And I've heard, like, from developers on Kickstarter who've tried or resist that temptation of saying, oh, we'll add a stretch goal for like an extra $100,000, we'll just add a brand new, like, a completely new game system to our title. But eventually there comes a point where you're just not going to get your return on that. And it's very hard to say, and this is the thing that is very weird. When We Happy Few was originally launched on early access, and I don't know this from my experience, but was it only being designed with 8 people at that time? Did they add the 40 people, or I should say the 32 more people? Is that a recent change? Because, as you said a few minutes ago, Rob, there's a very big difference between hiring 32 brand new people to finish a game in 8 months versus having those people over the entire length of the development process.
Yeah, and it would be nice to know if they are people who have been in and out of the project the whole time. But then again, you still have that, now they're official. And now you are suddenly, there's weird tax laws depending on where you are, and are they all in the same location? Because suddenly your location's going to be a lot bigger. Sorry, there's just so many things that come to mind over and over again when I think about this, because I've had to think about it before. Like, at some point I was like, what if Indie Voyage were to expand? What would we have to do? What would that look like? And it is hard. I don't have that particular skill, but I can see all the problems that arise.
And as Algoro was saying a few minutes ago, that there's definitely like for a lot of developers, and we talked about this before with Kickstarter, that some projects seem to be designed explicitly just to attract a publisher to basically fund the rest of the game. Stuff as we said, like Shenmue, Bloodstain, I think it was the Castlevania game, and for a lot of people, they also see that as kind of like a betrayal of trust, because Kickstarter was originally supposed to be you're making a game without needing a publisher. So why are you now taking this to a publisher to try and get it all finished?
Yeah, that is true, and it is a complete like lack of trust. I've met people who are looking at at us to help them with gather Kickstarter funding, and then I find out, well, they're actually looking for other funding too, like actual publisher funding. And there was a point in time where they could decide to go with both or the one, and they just went with the one. Thank God they went with the publisher's money. If you can get it, then use it. But a lot of people lean on Kickstarter to just prove out the desire for the project, and it's a little bit. It makes you feel terrible that you gave them your $20, or in some cases hundreds, when they didn't need it.
Mm-hmm. And again, and I think another big point is about just raising the price like that. And I think we talked about it very little last week, but the news, or what they said the reasoning was, they said it was twofold. One, to basically earn their return on investment or return on development costs, and two, to bring the price in line with the fact that it's now going to be on consoles. I think it's going to be on the PS4, Xbox One, and the like. So they wanted to keep the pricing uniform between the three. But I just don't know if that is a solid argument for a game like this. Again, especially considering the game has been sold for the last year or so at only $30.
Yeah, it's like saying, oh, but now our game is good, so you got to pay more.
Mm-hmm. And again, I'm not, and I'm gonna probably post the video about this either tomorrow or Saturday, but I played through it again, the same spots that I was in from the first play. I was here, and I'm not seeing anything new. I'm not seeing something that's wowing me. It actually felt like it got even more boring since I last played it. The only thing I noticed that was different was the fact that they changed the UI for the inventories and the menus, which is good, but I'm not seeing $30 more worth of gameplay content.
Yeah, and that, by the way, that's a great point down there that didn't even occur to me. The price raise sounds like the publisher cut.
That could be
I
true.
think that is an amazing potential insight right there, and it brings up all kinds of possibilities in terms of the politics and craziness that might happen.
And if the game decides to be sold in retail stores as well, of course, GameStop and Amazon, anyone else will have to take a cut of that as well.
Yeah, it is a different world when that starts happening.
Actually, I'm going to double check that right now. And then there's, of course, the whole idea of them adding in DLC and a season pass to the game.
Yeah.
And again, it is being sold. There's going to be a retail copy of the game. What's very weird is that they're selling it for $50 right now on the stores, while, I'm assuming, I wonder if they are going to raise that. I get it. It's being marketed at $50 right now, but I assume that's for the pre-order bonus, and then what's going to happen once time runs out, whatever, they'll put it back to the $60.
Yeah, that is ridiculous, because it's like they're doing an early access after the early access, but before the actual launch. It's very confusing. That really does it. It makes my mind hurt.
Yeah, and El Gordo deservedly brought it up about the No Man's Sky debacle. Again, as we've said before, $60 is a very big deal for a game, and you can't just throw a little extra paint or a little bit more work on a title and say, it's now worth $60. There's a premium that goes with it. Like with No Man's Sky, people weren't expecting content missing out of a $60 game.
Yeah, that is definitely, that price point comes with a very specific and particular level of polish and design and looks and scale and all that stuff. And yeah, people, there's too many options out there. People won't take that anymore.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just not seeing, like, there's just been no real talk about what does this mean from a gameplay point of view, other than charging people more money.
Yeah, it is weird. Like you say, there's UI, but UI improvements come with owning the game.
Mm-hmm.
That's not one of those things that's a design feature. Not that's worth any money to a gamer.
Mm-hmm. So I'm looking on their, oh my goodness, I am looking on the Gearbox site about the collector's edition for the game, and it comes with like an alarm clock, a soundtrack, a little mask, but oh my goodness, it doesn't come with the game.
Oh my god!
You can't buy the game with the collector's edition. Oh my goodness.
That's weird. And more, it's weird to have a collector's set for a game that isn't like a fan favorite yet.
Mm-hmm.
That it does. It's very backwards.
Mm-hmm. And they also, I was checking the Kickstarter earlier today, they went back and they like retroactively said that now for certain tiers you'll get the season pass or you'll get so and so. So, like, and this is one of those weird things, because again, we don't work for Compulsion or we don't have any ties to Gearbox, so we don't know this firsthand, but who suggested the DLC and the Collector Edition? Was this a Compulsion Games decision, or was this Gearbox telling them to do it?
I mean, obviously, like, I don't know who, right? But someone was obviously very excited about the concept, and it's like, oh, this could be, we could sell merchandise and all this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's like, even for Fallout, like Fallout 3, you didn't get a collector's edition right away. I mean, it took a little while. But now, I mean, obviously, the newer Fallouts can just come right out with a collector's edition, but it didn't. It wasn't the first thing out. It was something that fans got down the line. Same thing with movies and DVD sets. The first thing they come out with is not the director's cut. It's the regular movie as people knew it, and then as fans get more and more diehard, they can buy more and more features and stuff. That's how it goes. So it is backwards.
Yeah, and if you look on the collector edition page, they also said so that anyone who backed the game at tier 1 gets the game for free, anyone who backs at tier 2 gets the game in the season pass, and anyone who donated to tier 10 gets the fancy collector's edition. Which now I just want to see, I'm curious, how much did someone donate, where is it, to get that from the Kickstarter? Let's see. And again, the game was funded 334,000 Canadian for the game way back in. I always lose it on this page about where the actual funding was, or when did it start. Where is it? So what's considered tier 11? They don't even have like numbers on the. Oh wait, here it is. So tier 11. Oh my god. Oh jeez. So tier 11 cost $400 to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I just wonder, are the Kickstarter people going to still get these additional rewards? Because the stuff that they're talking about here is not mentioned in the special collector's edition. So stuff like voicing a character, well, actually not that, but let's see, a T-shirt. Yeah, so stuff like the T-shirt, the poster, that kind of stuff is going to be left out. But yeah, that just seems very weird to me. As you said, it just feels like backwards in what they're doing in terms of promoting this game.
Yeah, it is a strange thing. I mean, I hope it succeeds. I mean, I hate to say sales because there's a lot of people who put a lot of money into it, a lot of fans. And so they're going to want something that's great, especially if they're going back and giving lower tiers more stuff, because that's, when you're donating, you might think, well, I want to donate X amount so I can get this, and that's all I need. And then someone who donated $5 or whatever gets the stuff that you wanted and you gave $60 for. So I don't know. I have to look at details because I'm not quite up to date on them, but I don't know. It's weird. It's I don't know what else to say about it.
Here's something else that's very, very weird as well. According to the Gearbox page, it says Tier 1 will receive the game for free. Well, Tier 1, according to this, was only $6.
Yeah.
So, does that mean that everyone who donated at least $6 is going to get a $60 game for free?
I mean, I guess so. I mean, it's very nice to help the people who backed you, but there is a limit because people are the various backer tiers. They spent that much for a reason, and whether it be to get that thing or because they felt you deserved it, and now you're changing the rules on them. It's a little, I don't know. It's a little bit of pulling the rug out from under you.
And this is always the risk you run when you, as we were just saying in the last section, whenever you add more things to your project, you're basically just stacking more and more on top. It's like trying to put more and more things on top of a unsteady chair or a three-legged table or something like that. How much until the whole thing just topples over?
Yeah. And are they going to be adding those stretch goals to it now that they're charging more money, like the stretch goals they did not fund? Those are all weird questions. I don't know how you go about that. Like authentic English, very vague.
Yeah, and again, like if this was being just like a normal development run, we wouldn't be having these conversations. Like with the Darkest Dungeon, like they kept pretty much within the scope of what they wanted for the game. And when I spoke with Chris about doing more about the Darkest Dungeon, like I said, do you think we'll ever see more cinematic scenes? He just said, no, we're never doing them again for that game. It's just too much work. But that was one of the original stretch goals. In fact, I actually want to double check that here to add more animated cutscenes to the Darkest Dungeon. But yet again, and this is also the other thing that's very weird, when you take a project that was originally funded by the fans and then you bring a publisher into it. Like again, you promised to deliver a game of this scope at this amount of money with whatever goals were achieved. But now that you have this, like, doesn't that throw the whole thing out the window? And like I said earlier, like he made on this post that the company is now spending as much money per month as to what they got originally for the Kickstarter.
Yeah, because I guess that means that let's just do some quick math. How much do they get? 300 and some odd thousand. So I mean that's that's $12 million a month apparently. A Canadian. Then that's just that's a loose approximation, but if they're spending $12 million a month, that better be a really good game that's coming out, because that is that is top tier budget, like top tier. I mean, you better see like a Super Bowl commercial for it. It is like over the course of a year. I mean, that's a lot of money going into a single game.
Yeah. And I just double checked the Darkest Dungeon. Yeah, they had a stretch goal at 350,000. That was their big goal, to have more cinematics in the game. And they did not hit that goal, and they decided not to do that extra one. And again, like, this is where that weird thing comes with the game industry and consumers. Because when consumers see that your game sold, again, this is that famous example that I use, but when a consumer sees that you sold 1 million copies of your game, they assume you guys are now millionaires. So why can't you add all this stuff to your game? But like with the Darkest Dungeon, like it seems like they kept pretty much within the scope of what they promised. And that is definitely more than acceptable. But I know we've talked about this. I'm not sure this was before you started doing the podcasts with me, Rob, but I remember talking about this with someone that there's that misconception again that if a Kickstarter, let's say, was for $300,000 and you earn $600,000, people assume, well, now your game is supposed to be 2 times better because you've earned double the money. But again, like money and what goes into the video games is not always necessarily one to one.
Yeah, I wish that someone would come up with something creative, like a game should budget exactly what they need, and I feel like that's what everybody agrees on. So if you need $100,000, you ask for 100,000. If you suddenly get $2 million, well, you just have a big problem. There you could just say, well, we're going to take 150, and then the rest is just going to go to charity because we're going to make the game we promised in the time we promised, and this extra money is just kind of be, just in case. But the rest we're just going to give to charity, and we'll earn what we earn from the sales of the game, because it becomes a very big problem if you're promising things that are like when he says authentic English weather and new game mode, welly mode. Are you just assuming that you're going to be with the same people in the same timeline do an extra thing of particles, like particle generation and whatever welly mode is? I have no idea, but if it's a new game mode, that seems like extra work, and you're not changing your timeline or your team that you're assuming, because like an extra what is that? An extra 5,000 Canadian dollars for a whole new set of particle effects. That doesn't seem like a lot. I mean, that for a developer, that might be not even a month of work.
Yeah. And when I spoke with, Ed Healy from Gamerati, when we were talking about forming a Kickstarter and the challenge of Kickstarter, of setting up like your stretch goals and stuff, he said you have to do a really good job of organizing what your stretch goals will be. Like, you need to keep that momentum going. So he said that one of the things that he did, or like they were trying to do with like Cthulhu Wars, was have like really big, really popular stretch goals actually be very early in the project, because you want to get those ones done, and they're the ones that the people are the most excited about. And then try to pace them out so that you may have a few small ones, but then you want to have some big ones as well. Like, you want to keep that momentum going. And also, you don't want to run into the situation when you get stuck at a stretch goal that no one is really interested in, but that one is basically like 2 or 3 down from one that's also super really exciting.
Yeah, and I can see that in terms of the strategy of keeping things going. I just feel like, from my perspective, if you have a particular project and a particular set of things, you can always plan in that extra stretch goal as part of your project and timeline, and then if they hit it, great, you're ready to go. But if you have a big thing that someone suddenly reach, and you haven't planned for it properly, then it could really bite you in the butt. And I often wonder. I've already talked about what I often wonder, so we can go ahead and move on, I guess.
Yeah, and one thing I'm just looking up real fast. I just want to see what exactly they ended with for Cthulhu Wars 3. Alright, so, they actually broke 1 million for the project, so definitely congratulations to Pearson Games, if anyone is watching from that right now.
Very, very much so. Congratulations. That is very good.
So I'm just going to scroll down. Jeez, I forgot how big this Kickstarter page is. So they hit 1 million. And I'm just looking. They have all manner of stretch goals for the game. So the last one they hit was another figurine. And again, like as what El Gordo was saying in chat, the money versus value is just very hard for the consumer to understand. Well, it's very hard for anyone outside the game project to understand.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of the thing. Like, again, like with something like Cthulhu Wars, I'm pretty sure they went through, and they're not getting publisher backed by this. Like, I'm not, like, when I spoke to them, they're not taking this to a board game publisher who's going to finish the game for them. They're basically doing it all themselves.
Yeah.
And you can definitely tell that, especially by the fact of how much it costs them to run it. Like the initial goal. Where are you? Man, this is such a big page. There you go. The initial goal was $100,000 for the printing, and then they wanted to do all this extra stuff, but they still planned it out to know how to essentially, again, budget their money and get the best money for value. And then, and then again, like here, like I switch over to the We Happy Few one, and wait a minute. Additional cradle drugs. Huh. Like, some of the stuff, I don't know if it's actually in this game yet. Like, the additional drugs. Like, right now, when they originally released the game, they said that the entire story campaign of the game is actually not even in the early access version. That's being saved for 1.0. But again, you originally promised that at $30, so that's not going to be a additional $30 premium on top of that.
Yeah.
As you said, Rob, I wish them the best of luck, but that voice in the back of my head is like screaming that we're heading for like another No Man's Sky debacle coming soon. I hope I'm wrong, but...
Well, I mean, yeah, everybody wants... certainly their success comes with everybody getting a good game. And that's what everybody wants. They just want a good game. So when I look at the Cthulhu thing, I mean, when they put in new models and stuff, obviously they already have the art sketched out, and the money is going to go to the printing of it. And I feel like that makes sense. But yeah, when the money's just kind of now extra money in someone's pocket and they're just adding scope, that's a very different thing.
Yeah. And again, like with something like Cthulhu Wars versus We Happy Few, they budget, like I said, they budget this thing by the fact that they're doing it all. They know the work that goes into it. They know what they get out of it, what's going to go into it, and they budget it like that. But with We Happy Few, it enters that gray area of you have the Kickstarter money over here, and then you have this big ball of whatever Gearbox is giving them. So again, it raises that question, well, if Gearbox is now funding this game, what are we supposed to expect now? And again, it goes back to what I said at the start. What does full retail or full AAA experience means to a game like We Happy Few?
Yeah.
And I feel like we could probably spend another 20, 30 minutes on this one, but looks like we're getting close to the hour, so let's move on to our third topic for today, and then we'll hopefully wrap it up, because I have some Dark Souls to play later.
Yeah.
And that is this article that came up. Let me pull it up from the Discord. And again, for you folks watching this, either live or recorded, a $1 donation to the Game Wisdom Patreon gets you into our special Discord channel, where we basically just hang out and talk game design topics all day. So if you're interested, be sure to donate for that. But this was an article that came up on GameIndustry.biz today regarding he was saying that everyone should have a publisher if you want to survive on Steam, especially as an indie developer. And this is definitely an interesting one. Over the years, I've spoken to several developers, such as Cliff Harris and Z again from Serenity Forge, who started out as game design studios, who then decided to branch into doing publishing as well. And again, publishing, especially in independent space, has this very weird feeling to it. Like, I've stalked on a few Facebook indie groups, and there are people on there who they despise indie publishers. They feel you are selling out. You're betraying your indie roots. And then there are people who say, well, yeah, having a publisher is great. Let them handle all this stuff for you. And hey, FN3K, thanks for coming on. But when it comes to this idea of having an indie publisher, I don't know what to think about it. So, as someone who's done indie publishing, what do you make of this article?
Well, it is one of those things. Like, there was a time, obviously, where I thought indie publishing was necessary and it had to be done, and that's why we got into it, to help people. We wanted to just be there to help developers, not to make $1 million, just to help them along the way. And we had a great first project. That went really well. But over time, especially in this new market, I'm starting to realize that, and this is one of the reasons we're backing away, because at least for us, we were a very tiny publisher,
Mm-hmm.
but we're realizing that a lot of the value that is necessary for an indie developer to bring to their community cannot be brought by a publisher. Um, like if you are listening to, let's just say you're on a forum and someone comes on and says, "Hey, check out this game," we're its publisher. You react very differently to if someone says, "Hey, check out my game, I just made it." That's a very different. I feel like indie developers are very personal with their fans,
Mm-hmm.
and I mentioned like a magic bullet, as it were. I do believe there's one out there. It's not an easy one. If you're a developer and you want to make a game, it's generally a passion project if you're that small. And if indeed that's the case, you go on forums, you talk to other people who have similar interests. And, over time, you build a group of people who know you, who know the game you're trying to make, who support you, who give you comments and feedback. And that's the group who makes you happen. That's the group that makes you work. If you don't have that group behind you, you're throwing caution to the wind and you're rolling the dice. And these days, the odds on that dice roll are, you might as well just say no. It's like winning the lottery. So the way to do it is just to build your fan base via being an upfront and friendly developer who's willing to listen to other people and play their games and react to their games and their stuff. And I mean, that's just it. It's just being a normal person who enjoys something they're doing. And certainly in that particular article, I felt a little weird because there was a producer who was talking. And I get this, I always feel like if you have a producer on your team, you're not an indie developer. You actually have a business structure. And you have too many people on your team and that warrants someone to actually work as a go-between between everybody.
Mm-hmm. And like Elgar was saying, like, what do you think about going, instead of focusing on publishing, about marketing? Because again, for a lot, like as we've said, there are a lot of different jobs when it comes to developing a game, and as you said, it is very important for the developer to be making a good game, to be putting themselves out there. But it definitely still feels like a lot of new developers still seem to struggle when it comes to marketing.
And that is absolutely true. But marketing is it's always changing. We tried a million different things. Like we had we were definitely on Twitter and Facebook and all that stuff. We even spent money on small ads on Facebook, which, by the way, do work and do drive traffic. If the game isn't appealing, then people aren't going to buy it. But at the same time, most of the traffic you get has no direct interest in the game. They're clicking on it because at least it looked interesting at first, and then it wasn't what they expected, and they leave, and you lost a nickel or whatever. It is very difficult to market either traditionally or social media. Twitter marketing, like just being that presence. I mean, there's so much noise on Twitter, like just so much. The way I believe that this is the way you have to do it as an indie is you just have to be a personality on Twitter, like not like a personality like a famous person, but just someone who is who they are and goes and talks to people and responds to what they do and asks for people's advice on what they're doing. And certainly a publisher could spend all that time and gather that kind of goodwill, but it takes a long time. And if you're just starting on a game as a publisher that's already been in progress, well, you've lost an awful lot of time trying to build that audience up from scratch. And it's frustrating. It is a very frustrating thing. And certainly there are publishers out there way better than we ever were at this kind of thing. And I will admit that us stepping away is not because nobody should need a publisher, but it wasn't something that we were particularly as helpful as we wanted. But our first game that was successful had that audience coming in. He did it that way. He went on forums. He went on games. He liked games that were similar and met people there and got them to play his game. And some of the people that he got to play the early alpha build are still running tournaments on Twitch these days. Like I recognize all their names. I'm like, oh, these guys are cool. I remember them. Because they're the diehard people who made it all happen. They really did. I attribute 90% of their of the game's success, which it's a moderate success. It sold about 90,000 copies. So that's a good success for a solo developer. But when you think about indie successes and million games sold, that's just so rare. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for me to really speak about it from a successful publisher standpoint. So you're getting someone who's already stepped away a little bit. But yeah, there's a lot of questions, a lot of room for an indie publisher to act. I just don't think that the way we approach it, certainly not a traditional approach, is going to help most indie devs who want the help that they're expecting.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and again, like it's very hard to know just exactly what goes into indie publishing because, again, as we've said, all game development cycles are different depending upon the design of the studio. You may have a studio of people who has someone who completely understands PR and marketing on your team to begin with, or you may have a company of just 3 artists and 2 programmers and no one who's done any kind of social media work. So having like a blanket statement of, quote unquote, indie publishers going to help, like what exactly will that entail on a studio by studio basis?
Now, I certainly saw in the article, it seemed like he was hinting that publishers will give you money, and I know that that is certainly a big assumption for a lot of developers. But the fact that someone's giving you money means that they see your game as a success that can get them money, and so you already have to have a winner right off the bat for them to pick you. Now, if you can get that money, that's great, and you just need to follow through on your promises. But for someone like us, we did not give out money. We just worked for free until the game launched, and that caused us our own undue stress. But it is hard. Like if we don't have money to give you, we can at least give you services. But if those services don't work, then it hurts everybody. And that happened to us a few times. So we learned our lesson. We're moving on. So that's just our lessons learned, and I send that out into the wilderness.
Yeah, and what's very interesting again is that, as you said, like we've seen independent developers who get like that those million copies sold, and it becomes everyone thinks that they can do it. But there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that a lot of people don't necessarily know about. Again, like games like The Darkest Dungeon, Stardew Valley, Undertale, they didn't just appear one day and earn $1 million. I'm sure Undertale has probably made more than $1 million at this point. But there's a lot of work that went into these games that it's very hard to, again, like going back to our last section, trying to understand the work and the money and what you get out of it.
Yeah, the thing that comes to my mind is Fez, because that guy became a personality before the game even launched. So people really had emotions either for or against him before the game was actually out there. And that was very much to his benefit because there was all kinds of arguments and stuff, and the game was excellent. Everyone agreed, but how excellent was it? Was this guy nice or was he a jerk? And it was just he had the fame that just kind of came out of nowhere, just uber fame that no one's going to get on their own, just random. But that is one of those examples of a game that was partially driven by the fact that the developer got some fame somehow behind him.
Yep. And as we've said, like also trying to decide who and who isn't an indie, that's probably another 2-hour discussion right here between us.
Yeah.
But like as we said like last time, like someone like Jonathan Blow, he's not really an independent developer anymore. Like once you've made Braid and your game is being featured predominantly on the Microsoft and the Xbox Live Store, no matter what else you talk about, wherever else you make, you have all that clout behind you. And as I've said this before, and I'll say again, the real test, I think, of any developer is the game after they become recognized.
Absolutely.
That, I think, is where you separate the... trying to think of what's the right analogy or the right adage. I guess... you separate, I guess, the
wheat from the chaff.
There it is. Thank you. Yeah, exactly. Because again, there's always, and this again I think also ties in what we've been saying in terms of designing a game, that just because you've made one really good game, there's always that voice in the back of your head saying, well, what if I spend another 6 months on it? Or what if I take all this and throw it back into a game that's 3 times as big for my next game? And we've seen cases, sadly, again, like Clockwork Empires, Trine 3, I'm sure there are probably even more out there, of developers who are trying to keep things going. And there's a difference between making one really good and amazing game versus being able to build a sustainable company over that.
Yeah, I remember one guy years ago at a get together for like the IGDA in LA, and he told me he's like a game instructor professor, and he was telling me one game does not a game studio make, and that made a lot of sense to me, and it continues to make a lot of sense to me that just because you made a game doesn't make you a game maker. Just because you made a game doesn't mean that you have a successful games company. It really is. It's about running that business and making it grow and making something out of it. You can continue to be an indie developer your whole career, but that just means using the money you made, you're just kind of continuing on with your life and making games on the side, I guess.
And like we say, it's just very tricky, again, once you've become that big name, to then follow it up. Because people, like, as we said, with like something like We Happy Few and that perception of going from 30 to 60, like if you made the next Braid or the next Undertale, people are going to be looking at you a lot more closely when you release whatever your next game is.
Yeah.
But I think with that, we are over an hour in.
Yeah.
And again, we could probably sit here and chat all night long. So, I guess before I do my final updates, I guess for you, Rob, do you have anything you would like to announce regarding streaming or stuff that you're going to be doing?
Yeah, streaming is going to be Saturday and Sunday at 2 p.m. Pacific. I'm doing Torchlight 2 lately. I'm trying to do 4-hour streams regularly, so we'll see how that continues. But that's all I got planned for right now. There is more news that's coming in terms of what business stuff that I'm involved in. But until that solidifies and starts moving forward, I will keep my trap shut about it.
All right. And for me, I'm going to take a quick 15-20 minute break, and we're going to get back to Dark Souls as I round out the final quarter of the game. I don't think we'll be it tonight on stream, but we are getting close. And if you guys want to see more Dark Souls with 2 and 3, let me know. I did just get a press key for the game Rock of Ages 2, and this is going to be a kooky one. Do you know about the Rock of Ages game?
Yeah, I bought that. That one looked so weird, and I didn't have any expectations for it, and it was amazing. Like I just had so much fun playing that game.
Oh yes, I should probably do like a recap of that game, or maybe even like a Dissecting Design. Like for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, Rock of Ages is from Ace Team, that kooky developer of games like Xenoclash and Abyss Odyssey. There we go. I think that's what it was called. And Rock of Ages, basically the story is that you play as Sisyphus, the Greek character who's forced to roll a boulder up a hill for all eternity, who decides one day that he's sick and tired of it, breaks out of hell, and then just goes throughout time and space rolling a giant boulder and crushing historical figures with it. All to classical music, too. Yeah. It makes perfect sense. For someone it does. So I am really glad that they decided that it sold enough to do a sequel. Apparently it came out in 2011. Jeez, it feels like I think it was that long ago. But yet, unfortunately, I am under embargo until August 28th. But yeah, I will definitely be showing some of that game off, even just for the quirkiness of value alone.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
And again, for those of you watching this either live or recorded, if you would like to vote for games for the Saturday Night Grab Bag and lock in which ones you'd like me to see, please go to the Patreon. It's at least $5 or more will allow you to vote over there. And again, anyone who donates at least $1 will get into our Discord channel, where we just hang out and talk various game design topics on a day-to-day basis. So be sure to check us out there. But we're going to wrap it up here. This will be, of course, recorded, and I'll have this posted for tomorrow afternoon, as well as with tonight's stream of Dark Souls. So, one last thing. This week's podcast is going to be, I believe, for a Kickstarter that should be going up hopefully by the time the podcast is posted, so be sure to tune in for that. Next week I have my chat about fan-made games, which is also going to be very interesting. But again, Rob, thank you so much for being my co-host. And yep, definitely looking forward to when your whole office is set up and we can chat face to face next time, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
All right, so be sure to check out Rob's Twitch channel. Is it still Indie Voyage, Rob?
Yeah, that's going to be it for the foreseeable future.
All right, be sure to check that out for his plays. And be sure to come back in a few minutes for my Dark Souls run. If you're new, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. And again, we do our little live show Thursday nights, usually around like 9 or 10 Eastern, depending upon what's happening and if my internet decides to work. So, until next week, have a great night, and we will talk to you then. And I'm sure you'll be seeing more of me over the week with our vlogs. So, until later, see you all then.